Hello and welcome to a new episode of Convert on Shopify. My name is Pancho Mendiola, and today I had a conversation with Jeremy Epperson from Conversion Advocates. We spoke a lot about data, how to gather it, how to organize it, and most important, how to turn that data into insights. What should I do with all this information? It was awesome information. You'll see that I get really excited in this episode. So I was really picking these guys' brains, and I appreciate it for that. I learned a lot in this call. So I hope you will as well. And let's jump right in. Hey Jeremy, thank you very much again for your time. I really appreciate it. And I have several questions for you. You know that I am a merchant that is just getting into the CRO world, and so I'm trying to absorb as much information as I can from our guests. So thank you for that. Thank you for being
Absolutely.
open. Um, and I have several questions, and the first one would be, if I want to start to up my game in data collection. I mean, I'm not unfamiliar to data.
Yeah.
I use Shopify. I not only use the regular dashboard. I do some reporting. I use other platforms as well. But let's say that I want to up my game a little bit and go a little further from these essential metrics or KPIs that are being pushed from Shopify and these other platforms like Meta and Analytics. What are some KPIs that I should keep like really close track of and that are not super evident?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. So let's take this up to like the 50,000 foot view of what we're trying to accomplish from a growth perspective, right? So my focus is how do we get a 360-degree understanding of customers? So that's going to take market research, customer research, business intelligence and analytics. It's quantitative and qualitative insights, right? So if we try to get insights from just one channel or one piece of technology or one tool, we're going to be missing a lot of the necessary parts that we need to have to get that full picture, right? So what I have observed, because we've done, what is it? I've done over 250 CRO maturity assessments now. It's like our proprietary framework that I use, that where we rank marketing and growth teams based on 33 factors. And one of the biggest observations that I see is there's an overabundance, almost overwhelming amount of quantitative data that's coming from channels, coming from analytics, but there's not enough qualitative data or like market and customer insights from that side of the spectrum, right? So
Totally agree. Yeah.
yeah. So what we want to do is be able to like combine those things together, right? So you can definitely leverage really interesting things from analytics, obviously, like on-site experience and segmentation data, abandonment, like how user path, how people move through a website, going from a homepage to a category page to a product page to do they check out or abandon then. So those things are more familiar with most marketers who have been around for a bit. But the things that don't happen as often is, like I said, the qualitative side of things. So things as simple as customer interviews. You don't have to be a professional. You don't have to have done research for 15 years like I have to be able to interview a customer. On-site polling and surveying. So some of the coolest things we do are extract insights from the on-site experience. So you can use a tool like Hotjar, you can use Qualtrics, you can use Qualaroo, SurveyMonkey. There's a lot of different tools that exist where you can capture voice of customer insights. So what we're trying to get with that is the why behind what's happening. What is their motivation and intent? What is, why are they abandoning from the site? What are the objections? What are the questions or like lack of clarity that they have? So when we start to target those things, we can start to piece things together. So something as easy as setting up an exit intent poll where somebody's abandoning before they purchase. What we found from basically doing this research for hundreds of different websites is there are universally 3 to 7 primary reasons why someone abandons before purchasing. But if we were to guess at that, we would be completely off, because we don't see things the same way that customers do, right? So if we're talking about, you asked kind of in terms of like KPIs, and I'm kind of framing this more in like how do we collect data in different ways. but just realize that there are a lot of other forms of data that are actually going to drive a lot of value from like a testing perspective or performance perspective.
Yeah, I agree. You actually just launched a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't think I really think it was gonna work, but it actually did. So a, kind of like a poll or a like a customer interview, but directly from ads. So we had a free plus shipping offer, and we took them to a very very easy test, like 4 questions, and super direct and straightforward questions, but that gave us a lot of information. Obviously, a lot of emails, but also a lot of information, a lot of insights on what our customers are actually looking for, and that's something that you don't get, by just staring at a huge dashboard of numbers and percentages and green or red arrows, right? And we do need to make some efforts to get qualitative information as well. Awesome. Okay, I really like that. Okay, so now let's say that I start doing it. Okay, I start upping my game in data collection. Now the problem is, where do I organize it? That's a really hard one,
big
right?
Problem.
Yeah.
So I'll talk through like some of the ways, like first of all, let's start with baby steps, right? So we don't need to go immediately to the most sophisticated solution or an expensive solution. For most marketers, most business owners, they don't have the time, resources, background to be able to do that. So something is better than nothing. Just realize that it's better to get started and start down this path, because you can get actionable insights that can drive performance short term, right? Like right now. So I would say our approach to this is a couple things. One is we have something that is super straightforward. It's literally just an Excel sheet. I mean, we have client workbooks for all of our clients. We do consulting, so we have to like scale this over dozens and hundreds of businesses. But all we're doing is we're pulling insights into a doc, and we're just categorizing those essentially. So when you have insights, you have to put them somewhere. The easiest thing to do is rank and file, put those into an Excel sheet and say like, okay, here's the insights. Here's the insights we get from test results in search, the test results in social. Here's what we found works from a creative perspective in email. We always want to think cross-channel, like omni-channel, right? So we're collecting insights from the different parts of the journey like this. The thing that we need to do is take those insights and translate them into things that we can test. That's the really important part. So organization of the information, there's no like perfect software that exists that pulls insights across, all the tech platforms that you're going to have and all the channels you're going to have. But that's okay as long as we're taking that and translating that into things that can actually be tested. So let me give you like one example. A lot of how information or research is categorized is there's some kind of fancy set of slides that has a couple customer personas in it, and it has all these attributes that are not things that we can really target as marketers, right? So like I like to pick on personas because I think it's so silly that like, if you're like Sally's a cosmopolitan who lives in New York City, who none of that stuff is helpful because they're not segments or attributes or touch points in the customer journey that we can actually target for optimization. So what we actually need to do is take any data point we have, and from our team's perspective, we are going to spin up at least 3 minimum hypotheses based on that data, right? So let's say that like we run ad copy tests in search ads, and then we test, creative assets and social, and then we do an on-site test where we find that like that kind of messaging also resonates in that part of like the customer journey, the on-site experience. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those insights and we're going to say like, what other hypotheses can we build based on this insight that we have, right? And then for each of those, you're going to spin up multiple variations of things you can test. So whether it's copy, creative, experience, that's how we're building out what we're actually going to test. So I don't know if that answers the question, but like that's a part of like how we kind of approach this as a team.
Yeah, no, perfect. And yeah, so sometimes I think with with the there's an app for that culture. We tend to already like look for this like super fancy solution, and like you
Yeah.
said, sometimes just a sheet, or an Excel sheet or a Google sheet will do the job. And just a quick question: do you input the information through an automation like I don't know, like Supermetrics or Zapier, or do you do stuff like periodically and do it manually, and how do you do that?
Yeah, a lot of it unfortunately is done manually. So
Okay.
like one thing, maybe I shouldn't get ahead of myself on this, but we definitely have on our roadmap to invest in software that helps solve this problem, but it's not an easy problem to solve, right? So because there's so many discrete data sources, plus there's the manual work of conducting research by, talented people that are focusing on different parts of the business. So right now there's not a perfect solution, but again, I think what's important is like not just the collection of data and the management of data. Those are really important things that we need to like focus on and make sure that we're not skewing our thinking, but also the activation of data. That's where I see so many people miss, because we have so much hidden gold, and we do have these insights and we do have these data points and we do figure out really cool segments that matter from a marketing perspective. But all of that research, all of those insights are essentially meaningless unless we're testing against them to validate them.
Okay.
So that's the thing. There's these three different buckets of this, right? There's the data collection, how you manage data effectively, which you kind of ask about both of those things. But then there's the activation of, and you were kind of hinting at this, right? Like, what do we do? What do we do with the insights? Well, we take those insights, we create hypotheses, and we test them across the customer journey, across channels. That's what actually produces the ROI. That's what produces revenue. And that's the way that we need to think about it.
All right, all right. So, and I like right in the middle of that, let's say, of that process that you described, it's okay. How do you turn that data into actual insights? And I know this is a super hard question. It's more like a thought process than something like super actionable for anyone. But I do find myself sometimes with I also do consulting, and you know that two people can be staring at the same page or dashboard, and you're gonna see different stuff, right? And 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 I know it's something. This is a skill that you develop over time. But do you have some sort of like, I don't know, I don't want to say hack, but some sort of advice or tip to like how to start turning data into insights?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple concrete examples just to explain that better.
Yeah.
But one thing you touched on I think is really, really important, and people underestimate this, is like the nature of a cross-functional team, the nature of the value that's added by multiple people looking at data and creating more hypotheses and extracting more insights and creating more test variations. That is really, really valuable. Your performance, your ability to increase your growth rate is going to be accelerated if you have multiple people who are participating in that process. We've definitively proven that from just looking at hundreds of businesses, analyzing how marketing teams function, and realizing that collaborative nature, that strategic nature of multiple people looking at specific data sources and then coming up with their insights, and then people challenging that, and people giving different perspectives, and people picking up on things that one person might have missed, even if that person's way more senior. So I think that's really an important part of this, and we encourage that. But to give you some examples, so of kind of how we are like blending together this different forms of research. So if we're looking at the on-site experience, we had an e-commerce business that sells like outdoor gear and like different like kind of high-priced items. A big part of what they were doing is trying to increase average order value, and they had multiple upsells listed on their PDPs, because they're trying to get people to buy one product, and then however many products they can get them to buy, 2, 3, 4, 5. But most of the people who are coming to the site were first-time customers, so they're trying to push on average order value and increase the number of things that they're adding to cart. So we did a couple things. One, we looked at like what percentage of people are actually taking the upsells, and it was a very low percentage of people were actually getting upsold, especially for like new site visitors or first time customers, right? So it doesn't seem to be adding that much value. That's the quantitative side of things. Then we went and used Hotjar to look at heat maps and session recordings. And the heat maps showed that everybody was unclicking all the upsells. All the upsells were pre-clicked and it looked like they were automatically going to be added to your cart. So that's super confusing, right? That creates a lot of friction. Then we looked at session recordings and we see that people are basically moving into the checkout and then they're going back to the product page because they're like, wait a second, did I add all this stuff to cart or not? It was just a really weird experience. So you're pulling these different like forms of research together, right? So what we tested is we're just going to completely eliminate all the upsells on the PDP, right? Because we have all these different data sources that are showing us this is confusing people. It doesn't, nobody's taking it. Just by doing that, there's a dramatic result, but it's just to prove the point. Increase first-time purchases by 27%.
Wow. Okay.
We wouldn't have gotten there unless we went and pulled together all those different points, right? And if we wouldn't have kind of workshopped and brainstormed as a team, like, why do we think this is happening, right? So, and we have so many examples of that, so I can walk through more, but just want to make it like concrete of like how we kind of walk through this process.
Okay, awesome. But for example, you said that you already had, let's say this goal was to increase the average order value, okay? So somebody had to look at the average order value and maybe see a trend going up or going down, and from there make a decision and say, okay, this is the goal, and from there we can do the hypothesis and maybe a couple of them, like you said.
And something interesting about this is when we do this research, what we find is like the in-house teams or marketing teams, there's a huge disconnect between what we know in a business for products that we're working on that we're familiar with. We have these customer blind spots where the customer is seeing it totally differently than us. Obviously, from a business perspective, you want to sell as much as you can and increase the average order value and have them buy multiple products. But from a customer perspective, if that's not what they want, then we're creating that level of friction, right? So that's a big part of this. That's why research is so important, because it just stomps out all of our assumptions and myths that we have. It stomps out the way we think about things, and we start to get more customer focused. And really, the only way you can do that is research and testing, because we have to.
And that research, for example, or let's say that that insight came from a trend. Do you focus more on doing benchmarks outside of that specific store, or more like historic information from that actual store? What would you say that drives more these insights?
Okay, interesting. So benchmark information is contextually relevant, but it shouldn't be the thing that drives the majority of strategy, right? So like what it helps with is where do we focus our testing? So we want to get in a part of CRO strategy or conversion strategy is like it's testing velocity and it's testing strategy, which is basically how quickly can we test and where do we focus it? So benchmarking data can be really valuable for where do we focus our attention to make sure we're driving the most upside potential, right? So like that's the extent to which we use that, and all of the other research methods go much deeper into what's actually happening from a customer perspective, right? So if you're off track on that, what you're going to find is no matter how many tests you run, it's not driving a lot of value, right? So like we have to target the area where we do have upside. So I'm glad you're bringing that up, but it's just a starting point. And then we're using that like strategy level of like, where are we focusing? What are we trying to solve for? And we fill that in with the research insights, which educates our like specific test plans.
Yeah, that I asked you that question because I think as agencies or consultants or whatever are normally like our clients expect, or merchants, expect that we already know like what's the plan, right? I don't know if that happens to you. Like, hey, what's the plan? So what are you gonna do week 1, week 2, week 3, and the whole quarter? Like, and I don't know if this is also your experience, but insights come from. Okay, let's say that we say, okay, we want to increase average order value. That's our goal, and then we come with 3 hypotheses, and we do the strategy, and we do the implementation, and from there something else breaks. And I don't want it to sound like as something broke, but something else changes. Like we either go up or down in some other KPI. So now you focus on that. But that change derived from that implementation that you did. And you're basically following like, okay, what's next, derived from what you're doing. And it's really hard to make a plan because you don't know what's going to move. Like what needle is going to move, because there's like 4,000 needles. In the,
For sure.
That happens to you as well?
Yeah. So like I said, this doesn't just come from us doing consulting with clients. It also comes from us observing hundreds of businesses that we interact with, right? So like, I've spoken with thousands upon thousands of CMOs and dug into what they're doing, right? A couple of things that are important on this. Yes, there's an iterative nature that is really valuable. There's the iterative nature of testing, which a lot of people in the industry are familiar with. There's also the iterative nature of research, because these are 2 sides of the same coin, right? Like they support each other. So we definitely, this might be a kind of fun tidbit for you. In our process, we do not look more than 2 weeks ahead as far as what we're going to test. We absolutely will not say this is what we're testing for the next 90 days or 6 months or 12 months. That's just a horrible idea. Your CRO program is guaranteed to underperform if you try doing that. So what we're looking for is like batches of tests, things that we're going to test over the next like 2 weeks so we can get ahead of schedule. Because if we're sitting around in a meeting, we're going, what should we be testing this week? Now we're behind schedule. We're not being efficient. We're scrambling. People are going to be stressed. We don't want that, right? If we get too far ahead though, then we may put a bunch of resources towards tests that don't make sense. Because if test 4 tells us, hey, this increases average order value, but drops first-time purchases by X amount, and actually from a revenue perspective, that doesn't help, that's going to totally change the roadmap of testing for us, right? So on a week-by-week basis, we're looking at things from a sprint, a weekly sprint call perspective. So like every Wednesday, let's say, we're bringing everything that we have from a research and testing perspective. We're bringing new channel insights in, we've like conducted more research. So we're constantly evolving the strategy and we're constantly changing the roadmap. And that's actually a more optimal way to approach CRO. You're going to get better results doing that.
I love it. You call that perspective, that like type of meeting, or?
Oh, we call them weekly sprint calls. Like okay. I have a background in like, managing Silicon Valley engineers and stuff. So like we have a lot of startup-y kind of language, but the important thing is everybody who's a stakeholder is sitting in one room at the same time every week, and you're reviewing test results and you're reviewing research and you're reviewing channel data and you're, approving test plans and you're pushing those through the queue because there's so many people involved, right? Like there's copy, design, development, QA, results analysis. There's all these different things that are happening, right? So you got to get everybody in one place at one time. And again, that's going to like drive this forward much faster.
Awesome. Yeah. I really want to keep talking about this because I'm picking your brain. I don't know if you realize, but I'm picking your brains.
Yeah, it's fine.
And I appreciate it. But I know that you have some stuff to do. And so I hope we can have you back, man. There's a ton more questions that I have for you. So Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. It was very enlightening, and I wrote a bunch of stuff down. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully that was super valuable, and happy to come back sometime.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll reach out.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. Another great conversation. Jeremy, you can tell when someone knows their stuff. This guy knows his stuff. It was an awesome conversation. I wrote down a bunch of notes. I hope you did as well. And remember that for more information about conversion rate optimization, A/B testing, you can head to Convert.com, where we have a lot more resources there. You can also find us in LinkedIn. We share a lot of information there. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.